Welcome into OutKick the show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having a fantastic, what night is that? I can't even keep Tuesday. Fantastic Tuesday night. We just finished with the most one-sided, unbelievable officiating rig job I have seen since I lost $30,000 on the missed pass interference call in the Rams-Saints game a while back. Let me start, before I even dive into any of the debate itself, with the process. David Muir and Lindsey Davis didn't even pretend to be neutral moderators. They fact-checked and argued with Donald Trump all night. They allowed Kamala Harris to blatantly lie all night. In a sporting event, even rig job officials don't only throw flags on one team, don't only call fouls on one team. I said after the CNN debate, I gave credit to Jake Tapper and to Dana Bash because I said anytime an official or a moderator makes themselves the number one topic of the night, they have failed utterly in their job. I believe what most reasonable people are going to be talking about tonight is not anything that Donald Trump or Kamala Harris said, unfortunately, which is the purpose of a debate itself. It's going to be the fact that ABC News decided that they were going to weigh in aggressively and put a 3-on-1 match against Donald Trump, and they were going to constantly set Kamala Harris up with softball questions and topics that she wanted to address. They were going to go after Trump directly on their questions, but they were never actually going to follow up with Kamala Harris at all. And I thought we got that at the very first question, which I actually think was a good question. Kamala Harris, are people better off today than they were 4 years ago? This is a line that Ronald Reagan made famous in 1980 with his debate against Jimmy Carter. And Kamala Harris responded to that question by saying, I was raised as a middle-class kid. She then gave a litany of topic discussions that had nothing to do with the fundamental question at essence, which is what this debate and this election is about. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? White, black, Asian, Hispanic, gay, straight, male, female. Every single person in America, with the exception of all the illegal immigrants that Kamala Harris has allowed into the country, is worse off now as an American citizen than we all were 4 years ago. She didn't answer the question. She didn't answer a question all night long. But then Trump didn't follow up. He whiffed on her whiff. And this is my biggest criticism my biggest criticism by far is that this was a rig job. And I'm going to dive into some of the other aspects of the questions that I have. But Trump did what I was afraid that he would do far too often. He followed her down the rabbit hole and allowed her to dictate his responses. He actually listened too much to her and allowed her to drive a lot of what he said. I'll give you a couple of examples. Trump on the better off 4 years ago, he had an easy answer. She didn't answer the question at all. He could have took command of the debate with his first answer and said, do you notice what she didn't say? She didn't say that we're better off now. This election is a referendum on the leadership that she and Joe Biden have provided the country for the past 4 years, on the economy, on the border, on crime, on foreign entanglements. We're all worse off than we were before. The minute that Trump missed that opportunity, I said, he's going to go down into the rabbit hole. She said lots of things that are crazy that I didn't think Trump followed up on. But in particular, she got Trump to argue with her about his rallies. She set a trap for him about what people left his rallies. I encourage you to go. Basically, they're boring. And instead of just dismissing her attack in a sentence and pivoting and going to the story that he wanted to tell, he didn't do that. Kamala All of her answers were rehearsed. I thought she seemed anxious and very nervous at the beginning. From the moment she walked out and shook hands with him, which I thought was a little bit awkward. By the way, that was only a 30% chance. She was very wobbly at the start, and she was only delivering canned responses. And yet Trump allowed those canned responses to dictate many of his responses. I also think so many different aspects of this debate, in particular the notes that I jotted down. I thought he had a couple of good lines early. I was going to send her a MAGA hat. I thought that was pretty funny because they kept the tariffs on the goods that he put in place with China. But tariffs on goods is a very complicated issue. Most people watching a debate don't really understand the impacts of tariffs on goods. You have to bring it home and make people understand. Look, tariffs on goods also ties in with cost of goods. The cost of goods are far too high in this country. And Trump tried to say that they've been a 21% overall price increase on everything, with many things costing far more. This is the essence of the race. Every time you go to the grocery store, every time you go to get fast food, every time you go step into a gas station and buy something at the convenience store, it all costs way more than it did before. That's because of their failed economic policies. That's because they took 1.4% inflation when they came into office, and they drove it all the way up to 9.1%, and now they're trying to brag, but it's still twice what it was before. On abortion, again, the issues that they focused on, economy, border, crime, you knew they were going to serve it up. I actually thought Trump did okay on abortion. That was when we got the first fact check from Lindsay Davis, which I believe is an inaccurate fact check, by the way. Also, and she shouldn't have interjected herself in the first place, but Trump actually handled the abortion issue interestingly. They saved Kamala when Trump actually asked a very interesting question, which was 7, 8, 9-month abortion. Do you support that? It's an easy question. I'll tell you exactly what I believe in. Exceptions for rape, life of a mother, incest. I think that every state should be able to make its own decision. I think that somewhere in the first trimester, we should not allow abortion after that. Draw the line where you are. You can debate about weeks. That's not radical. Third trimester abortion is radical. Defending abortion all the way up to birth and after birth is a radical proposition. Trump's position is not radical on abortion. I thought they bailed Kamala Harris out a lot, but the first time that I really aggressively noticed them doing it was on the abortion issue when they switched. Also, Kamala blamed Trump for COVID, and I didn't think Trump handled the COVID question that well. But he clearly had nothing to do with COVID. It's not like Trump was excited that COVID happened. I thought the worst attack on America since the Civil War, this was another example where I thought Trump could. This was Kamala Harris on January 6th, which, of course, they spent oodles of time on. No questions about assassination, by the way. The assassination attempt of Trump just happened on July 13th. There wasn't a single question of Kamala Harris. You could have said, in fact, if I was a moderator, Kamala Harris, do you think rhetoric comparing Donald Trump to Hitler could have helped to inspire an assassination attempt on the president? Do you think it's important to dial back that rhetoric? Do you actually believe that Donald Trump is America's Hitler? That's actually a question that I would love to hear Kamala Harris try to word salad her way through. But again, she said January 6th was the worst attack on America since the Civil War. Tomorrow's the 23rd anniversary of 9/11. Does anyone out there think January 6th was the worst attack on America since the Civil War? When tomorrow is the 23rd anniversary of 9/11, some of the mistakes that Kamala Harris made were so egregious. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, oh my goodness, you've got an opportunity to rise up and dunk all balls in the face style on her, and you missed it. Part of me thinks I need to be running for office and up on the debate stage because I don't think I would miss opportunities like that. I really don't. I talk on the radio for 3 hours every day. She said that multiple times. If you just do a little bit of prep work, it's the day before 9/11. If she says it, You could have obliterated her on that. No response at all. Then John Muir got involved in the fact checks, and he was actually wrong. He said crime's down. It's not down. And Trump came back and kind of argued with him. But the way to conceive of this is since Joe Biden came into office, crime has continued to skyrocket all over the country. It has come down from historic highs that were set in 2020 and 2021, but we saw a 30-year increase in homicide. Carjackings are still skyrocketing. Theft all over the country. Crime has not come down. It's way more elevated than it was 10 or 15 years ago. And the idea that you wouldn't even discuss crime as a topic, really, and that the only time you would discuss it is to falsely accuse Trump of being wrong about crime, super embarrassing, rigged job from John Muir that's also in the guise of a fact check, actually factually inaccurate. Kamala Harris got the question on her policy positions changing and totally dodged it. Trump should have been ready on the policy position question. I'm doing this off the top of my head. He didn't even bring up the fact that she now supports a border wall, to my knowledge, after saying it was racist to build one. She now supports fracking after she said she didn't support fracking. She now says she doesn't want to ban paper straws after saying she wanted to ban paper straws. She now says that she doesn't believe in an electric vehicle mandate after saying that she believed in an electric vehicle mandate. Does she still believe that transgender surgeries should be provided for illegal immigrants? Does she think that illegal immigrants deserve health care? She is wrong on so many issues, and she's been on the opposite sides of so many issues. She just gave an anecdote that had nothing to do with the question, and Trump didn't nail down on it. Now, Charlottesville and the bloodbath lie. If you're out there and you're saying, hey, it is the job of the ABC moderators to be fact-checking in real time, I told you I don't think it is. I think you can argue about what the candidates said afterwards. I think the job of a moderator is to facilitate discussion and decide upon what you agree and disagree. I think that is the position that the moderator should adopt. It's the one, look, I'm voting for Trump, but I think I could fairly have asked questions of both sides, and I think I probably would have asked questions that would have angered both sides. That's the sign that you did a decent job as a moderator, and also you probably don't get noticed then, which is what happened with Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. Charlottesville lie, bloodbath lie. Trump said the American automobile industry, if Biden was reelected, would be a bloodbath because of foreign competition that would be allowed to take over the industry. Everybody understands that. Anybody who has ever worked in finance understands that the concept of a bloodbath is a function of something that doesn't go well, oftentimes in a business context. This is not even remotely incendiary language. By the way, they shot him. You want to talk about incendiary language? They shot him, and somehow he's in trouble for saying bloodbath. The Charlottesville lie has been going on, the very fine people hoax, for whatever it is now. Is it like 7 years? How do they not fact check that? If you are ABC News, if you are David Muir and you're Lindsay Davis, and you are of the opinion that it is your job as moderators to be putting your fingers, your hands, your feet on the scales of the debate, then you at least have to throw flags on both sides. You at least have to interrupt and even give the impression that you are trying to evenly apply the rules in place, because that's a blatant lie that's been debunked for years. The bloodbath hoax lie has been debunked for years. Trump called it out, but if they're going to weigh in on the debate and take a side, then come on, that is a no-brainer. Ukraine. The Ukraine question was a question that a moron would ask. Trump has said repeatedly that he wants to solve the crisis in Ukraine by ending the war. The way you end the war as a negotiator is not by coming out and saying that you're rooting for one side or the other. You shouldn't say you're rooting for Russia. You shouldn't say you're rooting for Ukraine. You should say Ukraine has the right to defend itself and that you are trying to end the war. In order to end the war, you can't take a side and say that you are rooting for one side or the other. This is an absolute moronic position from David Muir that reflects a childlike misunderstanding of geopolitical crises and how they are solved, okay? I mean, it's just a no-brainer. It was an awful question, and the way it was delivered with repetitive follow-ups. That's the other thing. It wasn't just that they were completely biased. It's that they always followed up with Trump. They never followed up at all with Kamala Harris when she would dodge the limited questions that they directed towards her. The racial identity question was a joke. Of all of the things out there in America today, it had already been asked in the CNN interview. Kamala Harris said she didn't want to answer it. I didn't think Trump handled it well, but it was on a silver platter delivered to Kamala Harris. Not one question about the previous debate on June 27th or Joe Biden's mental failings or physical failings. Does Kamala Harris have any regrets about claiming that Joe Biden was mentally and physically sharp after she saw what happened on June 27th? Does she bear any responsibility for hiding from the American public the fact that Robert Hur, in his independent counsel report, said that the president couldn't be convicted of a classified documents crime, even though he'd engaged in willful misconduct related to that crime, because the president didn't have the mental fitness to be found guilty of a crime? Yet he's still the president of the United States. Not one question about Biden. Not one question about, hey, Kamala Harris, what would you do differently if you were president? What has Joe Biden gotten wrong? Like, how much space is there between you? Nothing about that. And all of that in sum total, to me, led to a debate that was rigged on a level that we have never seen a rigged debate. Now, I don't know if there will be or won't be another debate, but I always go to the gambling markets, and the gambling markets right now, at the time the debate started, I took a screenshot. Trump had a 51-47 lead in the debate. This is on Polymarket. And with $859 million bet, Trump has a small lead right now, 49.2 cents to 49 point. It just changed as I was talking, 1 cent. So Trump went from 51 to 47. Now it's 49 effectively to 49. That is Kamala Harris's overall odds of winning the election improved by about 2% during the course of this debate as I am talking to all of you literally right now in the live gambling odds. Is this going to be this positive? I don't think so. I think the biggest story is going to be the way that the moderators handled the debate. I think it'll be curious to see whether there is or is not a second debate. I thought Trump went down the rabbit hole far too often. Kamala Harris never answered questions. I thought Trump chased Kamala Harris far too often. I don't think he made, as I said, the best case against her. The case is so easy to make that I think Trump stumbled all over himself in making that case. I think it was a 3-on-1 debate. But according to the gambling markets, Kamala Harris picked up about a 2% chance in terms of her odds of winning. Trump lost about 2%. So we went from a field goal game to a game that is now tied in the fourth quarter as we come down the stretch run with ballots starting out next week. In my opinion, nothing really changes. The race comes down to, has been for some time, who wins Pennsylvania. If Trump wins Pennsylvania, he's going to be president. If Kamala wins Pennsylvania, she's going to be president. I thought Trump had an opportunity here to create more space. I think he had the lead. I do not think he created more space at all. President Trump has said, I thought that was my best debate ever, especially since it was 3-on-1. President just sent that to us through his spokesperson. And I wish he had directly addressed it. Again, I think the topic is going to be the way that the official thing is set out. One question for Adam, for the crew out there. Adam, Adam, has there been any discussion about whether there will be another debate? I think that's going to be probably the biggest question coming out of this one. Is this going to be the only debate? My inclination was yes. Frankly, if I'm Kamala Harris, and I think that I often am not very good at extemporaneous interaction, I think I'd probably just say I'm done. But there are reports that there will be a second debate. I saw people talking about that. I'm not sure. To me, that's probably the most consequential aspect of this going forward. All right. I will be with you guys. Let's see. Yeah, what's the last paragraph, Adam? Under the bright lights, the American people got to see the choice they will face this fall at the ballot box between moving forward with Kamala Harris or going backwards with Trump. That's what they saw tonight and what they should see at a second debate in October. Vice President Harris is ready for a second debate, is Donald Trump. Okay, so we'll see what the rules end up being in October if there is a second debate. Right now, Kamala Harris's team is saying they want a second debate. To me, that's a sign that Kamala Harris thinks she's behind, because typically, if you're in the lead, you don't want to debate. So that, to me, is a sign that Kamala Harris's internal polling suggests that she is not winning. Now, we'll see what the impact, if anything, of this debate is. And I will remind you, it's not only the debate itself, because whatever 50 million people watch this thing, however many there are, but it's also how the clips are shared on social media and how it continues to echo, to reverberate in the days and the weeks and, frankly, the months ahead. Remember, Biden debated on June 27th. He didn't drop out until, was it July 21, I believe? So basically, he lasted 3 weeks after that debate ended before he managed to actually drop out. But it was the continued crescendo of the debate. I think a lot of what you're going to see, and this is what typically happens in the debate, there was no knockout. There was no, unbelievable outcome in this debate. Most of the time there is not. This was not June 27th. I think the Trump team is going to go to their corner and say we won, even against a 3-on-1 battle. I think that the Kamala team is going to say we won, Trump's a liar. We showed why we deserve to be the nominee going forward. In other words, if you're a boxing fan or a UFC fan, the match ends and then it goes to the judge, and both candidates hold their hands up in the air and say that they won, and then we see what the judges say. Well, in this case, the American people are the judges. It's going to come down to Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And if I had to pick one state to make a decision on, if you could tell me, hey, this is what the results are going to be, here's the result for one state. If you told me Pennsylvania, I feel very confident I'll tell you who's going to, and you told me the margin, I feel very confident I would tell you who's going to be the president of the United States. But just knowing who gets the electoral votes from Pennsylvania probably will determine who wins. All right, I love all of you. Be live tomorrow talking about this for 3 hours on Clay and Buck. I will also be live tomorrow with OutKick the Show. I'll have some gambling picks for you for college football. As always, DBAP, unless you need to SBAP. Get registered if you aren't already. Go vote 8 weeks from today. I'll be at the ballot box. I hope you will be too. This has been OutKick the Show.